Well, ladies and gentlemen, I am privileged to bring to you tonight a reading from works by one of the most popular poets that have ever lived. He's popular to this day in Iran. In fact, my son-in-law's brother went traveling in the Middle East, and in the city of Isfahan, he actually managed to hear at a crossroads a group of men who had gathered for their Friday evening's entertainment by deciding to read to each other, whether by heart or from a text, poems by Hafiz, the 14th century bard of wine and tavern romance. And there he is. The beautiful cover to this book was designed by Owego artist Annie Johnson. And you notice it has a Turkish tulip in the corner. Hafiz, in some of his poems, compares himself to the Turkish tulip. Apparently they are red, and at the bottom of the calyx, there's something as if what looks like a residue of ashes, as if somebody had stubbed a cigarette out in the middle of it. And that is the emblem that Hafiz chose for himself as a burnt-out lover. Nice place, a nice way to start. This book, I may tell you, is available from two places. It was published by the State University of New York Press, and they're still selling it. And that was in 2010 that it was printed by them. And now it's also available from the Dialogic Poetry Press of Vestal, which is sponsored by Amazon. So you can order it from either place should you wish to do that. Now, this poet, Hafiz, in 1815 had his work translated into a European language for the very first time. And that language happened to be German. And that edition happened to be read by Germany's greatest poet, the author of Faust, Johann Wolfgang von Goethe. You've probably heard of Goethe, maybe pronounced a little different. We have a street named after him in Binghamton, New York. We call it Goethe Street, but it's the same guy. Goethe was so entranced by what he read that he decided for the next 4 years he would spend his time trying to rival it. And he came up with something that he wrote. In 1819 he published it, and he called it East-West Divan, or Divan as we say in English. The Germans accent it a little differently. This Divan is a collection, that's just the German, rather the Persian word for a collection. And you see what I've done in this cover. Actually, this was designed by a SUNY graduate student in design. I put Goethe's picture, and then I put the picture of his Islamic mentor. Not only mentor, but twin brother. In this book, there's a section called To Hafiz, and one of the best poems, which I'll read you shortly in my translation, is an explanation of how Goethe stands in relationship to his Persian friend. It calls him twin brother. Just a twin brother. Now that's pretty remarkable. And when he published this book, he appended a note to the preface saying, "There have been rumors widely spread that the author of this book is himself a Muslim. He will not deny these reports." Fun, huh? I really love that. Well, now, I've been calling Hafiz a pub poet, and I call the book that I published, translating 100 of his poems with 100 verse replies, Poems of Wine and Tavern Romance. And you may have a little question about that, because I just mentioned Islam. He is a Persian Muslim poet, and of course, in the Quran, one is told not to drink any wine at all. That's a remarkable little contrast, isn't it? Now, it has to be remembered also that there are certain problems attaching to this, so that wine drinking has been a subject of debate in the last few centuries of Islamic cultural history. There are some passages that would seem to suggest moderation rather than total abstinence from wine is what's required. And on top of that, we learn that the Eden of the righteous, which will be the appointed lot of pious souls when they reach heaven, has 4 rivers going through it. Rivers of water, honey, milk, and wine. And the Quran says that this is special wine that does not fuddle you up, but rather clarifies all of your senses and total awareness. Now, how is that supposed to be appealing to you if you've never tasted wine? Doesn't it sound as if the metaphor is directed at wine drinkers? In any case, I'm not going to argue about this. I am just going to say that in Persia, the rules about wine drinking have been, the interpretation of the prohibition has been much more liberally interpreted, much more lenient and leniently approached than, let's say, in Saudi Arabia. So that pub poetry flourishes there. And one very good reason is, as you'll find out if you go to Iran, they've got wonderful soil, rich soil, perfect for vineyards. And it's hard to resist the lure of growing grapes there. So, actually, in preparing today's talk, I wrote a couple of additional poems, because I never stopped being interested in something just because I published about it. So here's the poem I wrote, which can provide additional intro context. A Persian would Hafiz with piety credit, a claim that surprised me the first time I read it, because, or although, with elation divine, he praised to the heaven the pleasure of wine. What's more, he's revered and exalted and sainted, prophetic attainment considered untainted by days when sobriety rarely was reached, while strange was the doctrine this Sufi had preached. Of angel and fountain in paradise flowing, he told with a wonder in memory glowing. In spite of the earlier life he had lost, was grateful in favor, whatever the cost. The lovers he sought paid him little attention, but wine would provide him a fit contravention. To love was itself an uplifting of soul, for worshipping drinker the holiest goal. For Germans, a Liebeslied, love song, means pleasure, while Leibesleid, bodily sorrow. No treasure might seem to the logical mind to present, and yet they're united. Not so? You assent? In other words, Hafiz had very little luck with the lovers that he intended to have a relationship with, and so he would have recourse to the wine, so that the two then become quite clearly linked in his imaginative world. An additional bit of background might help you. It helps to think about the 14th century. Hafiz's dates are 1320 to 1389, very centrally placed in the 14th century, and that makes him roughly the contemporary of Chaucer, 1343 to 1400. Basically, we're talking about a man whose mentality is not altogether different from that of Chaucer. In fact, I think they're cousins. Now, in contrast, Rumi, the greatest mystical poet perhaps that ever lived, and more serious in his religious depth and concerns than Hafiz, was born 1207 and lived to 1273. He's solidly rooted in the 1200s, the 13th century, which is a much more stable century. And Dante was born in 1265 and didn't start writing his Divine Comedy until 1307, and then he died in 1321. But most of his life and most of his learning was acquired once again in the more stable 1200s. Now in the 1300s things start to fall apart. The first half of the century is fairly stable, but you know perhaps what happened to break the thing up right in the middle. Yes, the Great Death of 1348 and 9, which is reported to have killed every third person in Europe, shook up everything. There were revolutions all over the European continent. All the proprieties were questioned, if not shattered entirely. In England, a peasant rebellious mob practically beheaded the king. I get tired just thinking about it. Barbara Tuchman has written the most amazing book about this, called A Distant Mirror, The Calamitous 14th Century. Now in Persia they didn't have this plague, at least not to the same extent as far as I'm aware, and I don't know what they had that would bring on a difference in mentality between Rumi and the later Hafiz. comparable to that between Dante and the later Chaucer. But certainly with Hafiz and Chaucer, you have a new outlook, which I would call, in one word, more playful. Playful is the word. Distanced, urbane, I wrote down a bunch of synonyms. Detached, sophisticated, humorous, whimsical, and passionate about enjoying life. Hafiz is like a Shakespeare character. He's not a soul devoted to religious lore, although he, like Chaucer, who quotes the Bible, every time he satirizes anything, he quotes the Bible in satiric terms. Well, so Hafiz too needs no excuse at all to quote the Quran and all kinds of folklore from Islamic tradition. So, maybe we're ready, instead of introductory talk, for a poem by Hafiz. I suggest something quite amusing, Dialogue 62. Listen, for what is the call from the merchant of souls at the market? Hark to the region of souls, hear the inhabitants there. Days have already gone by since the vine's lovely daughter went missing. Hold her importance in mind, open your eyes, look around. Ruby of hue was her dress, and her crown as the foam of the ocean. Lately gone out of her mind, she will be needing your aid. Anyone who can deliver the bitter with sweet be rewarded. Even if hell hold her fast, seize her, return her to me. Bitter and sharp and most heady at night is the rosy-hued maiden. Soon as you find her, come quick, bring her to Hafiz's room. So this guy loves wine so much that when he misses a bottle, he, so to speak, advertises it at the Missing Persons Bureau. I'm commenting by bringing in Omar Khayyam, you know, the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam. He is a Sufi also. The Sufis were a rather, they were quite a diversified group of mystics, Islamic-based, but hoping and planning to transcend all the religions. And they have a whole spectrum of different kinds of personalities. Some very skeptical, some nearly alcoholic, if not having become alcoholics, like Hafiz. Omar Khayyam had informed us the barren old helpmeet of reason he had divorced from his bed, roistering rather with joy. It was the vine's lovely daughter, the same that enchanted our Hafiz, came to the room of the bard, mathematician and mage. Wine with her madness and bitterness, why would I eagerly seek her? Wishing to amplify bliss, nightingale brave will I sing. Words in Ovidian rhythm can aid me, but afterwards adding strings to the heat of the heart, I will a chorister be, joining the birds of the forest, indeed with the tree spirit playing. Silent in life she becomes, now in her sleep, violin. This is not Hafiz anymore. This is my reply. This is me speaking. I'm a violinist and a singer, and I identify with birds, and I identify with every kind of music, and identify with Ovid. Now, Ovid is related because he invented the verse form that Joseph von Hammer is using to translate Hafiz. Hafiz does not use any of these glorious verse forms that Joseph von Hammer used in translating. But the forms that von Hammer used got Goethe excited so much that he called Hafiz his twin brother and spent the next 4 years trying to rival and imitate him. So I want to applaud Joseph von Hammer for his poetical ingenuity in using forms as a translator. I think he is frankly one of the very greatest of German poets, and assuredly the most neglected. I do not see any Germanists willing to agree with me on this point. I think though that I've almost persuaded my former German teacher, Katharina Mommsen. She's 92 years old and keeps, however, a very thoroughly youthful and news-receptive mind. Anyway, that's a little bit about Joseph von Hammer. Hammer is spelled just as, and pronounced like the English word hammer. And interestingly, that's German slang nowadays. If you say, ist der Hammer, He's the hammer. That means he is really the top of the heap. Now let's try another, which hits a theme very hard that Hafiz loves, and that is that there's no difference in essence between the mosque, the church, and the tavern. They are all places where love can be found. They are places that teach the doctrine of love, and it's our business to practice it. So, poem number 71. Like-minded, excited, I'll say it quite loud. I'm seeking in goblets a life joy that's breathing. The drinkers don't merit the scorn of the monk. A pupil of drinkers of wine dregs, I'm gladdened. That's interesting, isn't it? He learns how to drink wine from the people that enjoy every last drop, and even the dregs at the bottom. If doors of the tavern aren't open to me, then where should I knock? And where else find a helper? Don't mock me for being self-raised, little trained. Wherever's the nourishment, that's where I flourish. Of mosque and of taverns, don't speak to me, please. As God is my witness, where he is, there I am. The dust will become the philosopher's stone, and I'll be the slave of the dust bomb of amber. Being the slave of the dust is part of a love poem cliche in Persian literature. If you really are in love with someone, you say that you want to bow so that your forehead touches the dust of their threshold. That's real humble. With love for the charming Narcissus I'm filled. A tulip I wait on the bank of the river. Confused by refusal, I'm famous afar. A polo ball trapped in the net of the tresses. He often talks about himself as being the victim of his beloveds who knock him around like a polo ball. And he's the captive of the tresses of the people he loves because that's his big fetish, is aromatic long hair. All of his men have aromatic long hair, and all the women too. Bring wine, be the fatwa of Hafiz observed, from dust of hypocrisy, cleaning the spirit. I think of the dust, this is me speaking, and the grasses of Whitman, the scorn of the spotless, the comrade besought, the feeling of God on the road where you travel, the ethic of joy in the world as it stands. They're scruffy and rough and outsiders, but happy in friendship extended and eager to please. Our lives being brief, we have need to acknowledge the brave who the burden of living accept, and love without questioning, confident always that God in our sandals can walk on the earth. Well, let's try now something on a similar theme. Unlike Rumi, who has perhaps a range equal to that of Shakespeare in his themes and topics, Hafiz's range is more limited. There's wine, and there's tavern romance, and there's tavern romance, and there's wine. He does like flowers, but he seems to have a vocabulary of only about 3: the tulip, the rose, and the narcissus. Poem 25 will continue our favorite theme. And you notice the rhythm is nearly always different, because Hammer invents rhythm forms as he goes along. He also uses every form that he could ever pick up from Latin and from Greek verse. So it's an education in metrics. There never was a better metrist. I'm the one who turned the pub to a mosque. Innkeeper's word, early morning blessing. Thrums the lute today, no song of the morn? Calm will I stay, chanting rue, regretful. Cloister, pub, your joy alone do I want. Let it suffice, heaven is my witness. Rather than a prince, a beggar I be. Torment from you, there's my fame and honor. Sunlight I will relish, right at the gate. There will my face wait for my beloved. Death may tear apart the tent of my life. Why should I move? Here are life and pleasure. Even when a sin has never been willed, better admit, Hafiz, when you're guilty. He gets a lot of reproach from his superior monks. He is a Sufi, and he wears a habit, a blue habit, which he sometimes gets rather thoroughly covered with spots of red wine. He at one time says, "I wish I could wash them out with my tears." I think he has got his tongue in his cheek when he says that. Here's my reply. Torn, imploring tune I never had heard, boon of a bane, sweetly paining music. 'Tisn't every day a meter will make. A meter is a poetic rhythm that's regular and recurs and is musical, holding my heart such a fair impression. Rhymeless Hafiz lines, and yet they impel, ardent in art, manly resolution, honeyed on the tongue and sweetening grief. Here are the hymns not to be resisted. Omar, barren reason, humbled and wed, soon in her stead, daunting vineyard's daughter. Hafiz looked for pleasure, yet will he drink, daily to find needed consolation. What he loves eludes him, well do we know, many the ways, luring, then evading. Okay, I'll try another one not far off. Dialogue 33. You pious one, do not defame the drinker. His sins aren't credited to your account. If I am good or bad, just you be quiet. A man will reap whatever he has sown. I'll not abandon hope that God be gracious. You cannot know who's damned and who is blessed. A church and mosque are each the house of love. A loving friend will know the drunk, the sober, and not alone from purity I've fallen. My father paradise already lost. Isn't that fascinating? We know almost nothing of Hafiz. And here, this is the only time I've ever seen him talk about his father. Evidently, Hafiz is not the first drunkard in the family. My head I to the taverner surrendered. So bow your head, I say, to envy dull. The garden's lovely, true, but you must relish the meadow's shadow and the greening grove. What long ago was in the book indited, you know. Indicted means written, if you spell it without the C. Do not rely on pious deeds, glass-touching lips. Upon your death day, Hafiz, with bliss on lip you'll rise to heaven high. If you are so inclined, fine inclination. If this remain your custom, custom-wise. Now, you know, Hammer does a very interesting thing at this point. He quotes a Latin jingle with a similar idea, seizing the moment and raising the cup. And I'll read it for you, and then I'll read my translation. I had two helps here, not only the Latin, but since Hammer translated it for his German readers, I used the German too. But you deserve to have it in English. But first of all, I'll read the Latin because it's so much fun. Meum est propositum in taberna mori, uba vina proxima morientis ori, tunc cantabunt letius angelorum cori, Deus sit propitius istiputatori. I propose at death to be in the tavern laid, near the dying mouth for me let the wine be made. May the choirs of angels sing, bliss will never fade. Merciful be God the King, drinkers he will aid. And I write a little comment. The helpful Hafiz, Hammer, here had offered 2 medieval hymns of east and west, to ample Bacchic imbibition wisdom, that whoso wills to drink may solace have. For church and mosque are charitable, insight that many pious worshippers forget, who, eager to correct the flaws of others, the way to favor darken for the weak. And who are strong? Let mosque and church be humble, nor steal the judge prerogatives of him, whose verdict by the mercy angel tempered, no mortal fallible can prophesy. It says, by the way, and I always like to think about this, at the beginning of every one of the 114 surahs, or cantos, or chapters of the Quran, it says the following: in the name of Allah, that is God, the Beneficent, the All-Merciful. The all-merciful, the beneficent. Actually, I got the order backwards. But they mean nearly the same thing. And the Sufis say, why is it the all-merciful, the beneficent, and not the righteous and the just? It's because, they answer, God's mercy will always overcome his justice. I hope that's true for the sake of our poet here. What I do is, you may notice in my replies, I often enter quite thoroughly into the spirit of this character. He is a major dramatic character in world literature, and I just simply want to practice being in the mind of a person that can create such a being. Now, in poem 50, we'll go to poem 50 now. We have an interesting love poem because it's much more descriptive of the person who's loved, and it poses an interesting problem. The Hummer translation shows us a man who I think is being presented pretty clearly as a man. Then he gives a rival translation to show how a colleague of his had interpreted this as a description of a woman. And in fact, it isn't so easy to tell, because as I point out later in my reply, ruby lips, narrow waist, ivory skin, fragrant tresses are all characteristics of both men and women in the Hafiz poems. Sometimes there'll be a he or she, and sometimes there'll be a her or him, and the description will still be the same. So by looking at these people, you cannot easily tell the difference in gender. That's an interesting fact about Hafiz's imagination. There are two distinguishing ones that seem to me I have discovered. One of them is Cyprus height. A man is more likely to be called a Cyprus than a woman. And another thing that seems to me quite distinctive and settles the issue always is beard down. A downy beard. That I don't think would ever be credited to a woman. I think that it pretty well gives the show away that we're talking to a man. But interestingly, the rival translator here kept the downy beard. He did not censor it out, but then he still turned the love object into a woman. It's very interesting. I will read both of them so you can see how this is done. "'Tis fitting you from all the handsome tribute take, for truly in the land of handsome you are king." King, right? That's important. "Your eyes have every heart of Turkestan bestirred, from China, India, to hairlocks bearing gifts." He thinks that everybody in China and India has the same hair fixation. Those aromatic tresses, you cannot mess them up. He sometimes thinks that the wind has transported the aroma to him even when the guy is in another town. "The whiteness of your face is brighter than the day. The blackness of your hair is darker than the night. How then shall this my malady be ever healed, when to my heart from you no means of healing comes? To Hizar, that's a sacred fountain's rill, your slender mouth a sweetness lent, the sugar cane of Egypt, near your lips ashamed. You're battering my soul, and why, you heart of stone, too tender far my shattered heart, mere fragile glass. How thin your narrow waist with little hair-length belt, how flexible your body, white as ivory, your beard down Hizar, and your mouth the rill of life, your stature tree-like, hair-thin waist, and wax-white breast. For you, as for a treasure, yearns poor Hafi's heart. Oh, were he but a slave, and to your threshold dust." It's not so hard to become a really quality, so to speak, trademark registered Persian poet. There are certain things you have to say. Here is a rival translation given by Hammer by Count Karl von Harrach. "O you of beauty crown, appropriate. To you, of beauty crown, appropriate is beauty's gift, your wine-like sparkling eyes, the heart of Turkestan uplift, and your curly hair draws China's, India's wear. Day's radiance fades away before your face magnificent. The darkness of your hair is with the midnight blackness blent. What heart its health regains if you don't heal the pains? The rill of Hezer flows as though from rosy lips it came, the spices of your mouth. Shame Egypt with her sugar cane, to me so weak brought low, and shattered mercy show. Your ever slender waist, sublime your height, and pure to see, your stature cypress high. Your limbs like bending ivory, your mouth will give new life to one with illness rife. Fresh down upon your chin, so like the tender meadow green, your jasmine fragrant breast, of beauties all are you the queen, if only Hafiz prove apt servant of your love. So he turned into a woman here. He's the queen. He was the king before, and on the next page he becomes the queen. But this is the problem we have. Hammer, by the way, does not go scot-free in this regard, because as modern philology has shown, Joachim Wohlleben in Germany, a marvelous philologist, has gone through every poem that Hafiz ever wrote and shows what the gender ought to be. And Hammer has censored a lot of it. He turned the men into women. He thought he might please the reader more, but he's not consistent in that way. I corrected everything according to the latest data from our German philologists. So I wrote a reply to that, and I had a good time trying to sort out the issues here and come to some opinions, provisional and tentative. In Persia, too, they loved the kind of blazon hymn that Edmund Spenser or Philip Sidney were to write, a later style we find invented by Marot. In Europe, a tradition of ambivalence accrued to lyric listing of the body parts, an entertaining topic. Many people think parodic humor came to dominate the work that claimed, "My mistress' eyes are nothing like the sun." 130, Shakespeare. Hafiz's blazoning would seem of all ironic shadow to be free, but as in William's Leader, where we cannot tell in any given lyric if it be addressed to William's cherished comrade or his Lady Dark, these in a drama fully worthy of the plays contend for his affection, for he loves them both, although they love each other, sweetly heating strife. So here the fond portrayal of the paragon shows either man or woman in the poet's mind. More likely man, however, for there's been a trend conformable to narrow sects morality. That I said sects morality, of gender alteration in the rendering of Hafiz's verse, and I would vote with Hammer here and not with Karl von Harrach, though I like his lines. Depicted is the king of beauty, not the queen. And let me add that after reading Hafiz's work, our expectation we may need to readjust, for beauty goals portrayed in vaguely gendered traits. A narrow waist and fragrant hair and ruby lips are found in Hafiz's work, in women and in men. And that is why a body blazoned in a verse may readily be gender switched, and even yet, in this portrayal, few if any changes made. You'll maybe hear a Hafiz tune and quickly mark, no hint about the gender of the addressee. Now here's the value statement patently implied. It's only love we care about, and love is love. So, that was a long talk, wasn't it? Can you tell I used to lecture for 35 years? Oh, before we leave this theme of love and wine, I would like to do Dialogue 74, because it's really one of the most inspiring in the book to me. Basically here, Hafiz tries to account for why he is so deeply in love with love. And he attributes it to the fact that before he was born, God engraved on his heart a straight line. The straight line is the way to make the letter A or Aleph in Arabic. So that means beginning. It means God who is the beginning. This is the love of God for Hafiz, engraven in his heart forever, and something which should be also not in just heart but mind as he goes through his rather difficult love life. First, I will tell it out loud with the greatest of joy in the telling. I am the servant of love, free both in life and in death. I am the bird of a world more supernal, I cannot explain it. how I abruptly fell down suddenly into this net. Formerly I was an angel, and dwelt up above in the heaven. Then to the wilds I was led, old Father Adam at fault. Ah, but the paradise tree, and the Salsabil spring, and the Houris, they're supernatural females, prepared to give special favor to the heroes of the faith after death. All of them long I'd forgot, simply in thinking of you. Still is my fate undiscovered by all astrological knowledge. Answer me, Lord, when I ask, what am I destined to be? I, when a servant devoted, the tavern of love was frequenting, nothing but burdens anew daily a visit would bring. Heart-blood had reddened my eyes, and my wildness the least of my worries. Fool! To surrender my heart, why did I give it to them? Writ on its tablet is only the one of my friend, letter Aleph. That's what my master had taught. Nothing more wise could I know. Drying my manuscript lines with the ends of your beautiful tresses. Don't let the tear-flowing soak shelter from Hafiz away. In other words, with your beautiful long hair, when you dry off my text, don't wipe it away, or my protection from my miseries will also be wiped away. Don't go off, because you are also my shelter, whom I do not wish to have. See, go away. And so I made a reply. Free though a servant, a bird in the spheres of the lower and higher, only the A of the one, Alpha, is writ in the heart. Doctrine Platonic, if this in the lines of the Persian we're wanting, here is a myth-laden place, weeping yet dowered with wings, angel new fallen, the memory weak, Eden only illumined briefly by one who arose bright anamnesis to lend, telling of something supernal that never a scryer envisioned, Hafiz or Adam or man, earth torn away from the sun. One in the heart, the inscription that never may wane or be faded, tells of the many as well. Abecedarian ray. The ray is letter A, but it tells the whole alphabet. It sums up. That Abecedarian just means alphabetic. Light being sown in the soul, can it flourish in courts of the daybreak? Cedar and cypress alike, towering up to the eye. The beloveds are compared to cypress, and if you look, it directs your gaze up to heaven. Thus will the allegorizer be comforted, weary of seeking, lately unriddled the fate writ in the form of the stars. Well, that is one of the most famous and one of my favorites. The A engraved by a single line in your heart. That comes back more often later in the poems. And now in part 2, I would like to show you something more about Goethe and his twin brother. And the best way to start is with what might have been Goethe's favorite, Hafiz. No, Goethe has too many favorites, but this is certainly one of the near the top of the list, and that is shown in dialogue number 8. If the youth from Shiraz took my heart in his hand, for his beauty mark would bestow Samarkand and Bokhara. He's talking here apparently to Emperor Timur, or that's Tamerlane, better known as Tamerlane. He was called Timur in Persia, and he conquered many countries and many provinces, including what were regarded as the richest and most luxurious Samarkand and Bokhara. And here Hafiz says that both of them I would give up. They are worth less to me than the beauty mole on boyfriend's face. Taverner, hand me the wine, for in heaven you'd vainly be seeking Roknabad's flowery bank or Mosella's. Woe for the rogues with enticing black eyes and with gestures endearing, rob all restraint from the heart as the Turks do. Love, when ungratified, doesn't require all the beauty my friend has. Faces alluring will need no adornment. Stay with the poet, the goblet, and seek not the things that are hidden. No one has found them. and no one will find them. Joseph's in ravishing beauty explains the enchantment of loving. Love rent asunder the veil of Zuleika. Heed my advice, be aware that a youth of a high, noble breeding treasures the reverend words of an elder. Ill have you spoken? Forgiven. 'Tis fitting the ill had been spoken. Bitter goes well with your lips and their sweetness. Hafiz, you've lined up your melody gems. They're the beads on a necklace. Play it like, worth a bestrewel in heaven. That's another trademark. I've told about some of his trademark images, trademark fetishes. This is one of his trademark poetic devices. No matter what you've been talking about, congratulate yourself in the final 2 lines. Often he says that he's as famous and well-liked in India and China as in Persia. And that probably is true, because the Persian influence in China was quite considerable in the Middle Ages. And I have even read that into the 20th century there still existed a Manichaean Persian-influenced church in China. Well, now I have a little explanatory comment on that. Thrilling the distich that opened a lyric. Distich, it means a couplet, a 2-liner, where love spoke to power. Timur the Great didn't find it amusing. Legend proclaims that he summoned the singer to court with a query. What may it mean, your colossal presumption? Dare you belittle the splendor of realms, your omnipotent ruler, conquered in lightning-like triumph of battle? You, Samarkand and Bukhara, would grant, and without hesitation, both for a beauty mark. Better explain it. Hafiz replied, in the version von Hammer presented and relished, sorry, my writing was badly reported. Here's what an accurate transcript will show you I plainly had written. Gladly I'd give from Bukhara 2 pastries. Aptly he sprang from the trap with agility all have applauded, many the ways they retell of the triumph. Okay, so that's rhetorical tricks that are used. I don't know how he got that. Maybe the Persian language makes it seem a little more reasonable. But he avoided all punishment for his transgression, if that's what it was. This whole episode and Goethe's use of it inspired me to write another poem this week. And the epigraph is, if the youth from Shiraz took my heart in his hand, for his beauty Mark would bestow Samarkand and Bukhara. That's the first line I read. The Persians their Hafiz revered so intensely, his tone they held holy and treasured immensely. When opened at random, they deemed it would show the reader the best of directions to go. They used it as a fortune-telling book, the way in the Middle Ages Christians would use the Aeneid of Virgil, or in all ages, scripture readers have used the Bible. In Germany, Goethe was charmed with this writing. He loved it so much he'd have found it inviting to look in the book for some helpful advice. The translator, Hammer, found specially nice the couplet above where the poet, disdainful of Tamerlane's wealth, said he'd find it less painful to give up his boyfriend with face mold so cute than yield Samarkand and Bukhara to boot. Great Goethe, who favored the lines recommended, would find with their aid his big writing block ended. He was stuck with Faust Part 2. And he made it very clear to everyone and all the commentators that Hafiz was his great liberator. But it took Katharina Mommsen, my German teacher, to come along and make Goethe and the Islamic, Arabic, and Persian world her research specialty for a lifetime. Because she encountered all kinds of bigotry. People would not admit that Hafiz was Goethe's twin brother, though he himself said so. They would not call him Goethe's Islamic mentor, although Goethe said that he's not going to deny the rumors that he himself is a Muslim. In other words, bigotry had to be put up with far more in those days than now, though it assuredly has not ended, and Islamophobia is under certain evil influences has experienced a sad resurgence. Great Goethe, who favored the lines recommended, would find with their aid his big writing block ended. We know he called Hafiz a brother, a twin. Did brotherly bravery help him begin his poem on Winter and Timur? Lambasting Napoleon Tamerlane, winter is hasting to warn the great ruler the deadline was near. He'd soon enough die, and the ice storms appear. This is one of Goethe's favorite, or most, I think, one of his very best poems that he ever wrote. It's quite short. It's called Winter and Timur, and nearly every critic immediately has felt that this is Goethe's way of prophesying the death of Napoleon and expressing extreme distaste with the fact that Napoleon, who started out a liberator, has turned out an insufferable tyrant. Let's see. Now, we'll turn back to Goethe's Divan, where I have copied a phrase that perhaps, not a phrase, but a paragraph or two that Goethe perhaps happened upon when he was going through this book, and it may have inspired the Timur poem. It's on page 33. Here's Hamra talking about Hafiz as a man who spoke truth to power. And I have to say, I think not only is Hamra one of my favorite poets, but he's a great prose writer too. But this is very beautifully written. Honored by princes, loved by friends, Hafiz in the rose gardens of Shiraz passed in pleasure and study the days of his life during what happens to have been one of the stormiest centuries Oriental history had ever known. The dynasties moved to battle by mutual hatred arose in succession, one upon the ruins of the other, each to fall in its turn, yet all eager to raise the firebrand of war, until by the all-conquering brand of Timur, the entirety of Asia lay in flames, an encompassing and fearful conflagration. Hafiz was presented to the emperor, Tamerlane, Timur, who received him with grace, although in one of his ghazals he had gone so far as to dismiss Samarkand and Bukhara, the chief adornments of the crown of Timur, as of less worth than a beauty mark of his male beloved. The horror of the political storms that had convulsed the Orient offers a notable contrast to the untroubled serenity of the poet, who, while realms collided round him and usurpers ascended in thunder, wrote with unruffled cheer of nightingale and rose, of wine and love. The fury of the times must have unfettered a spirit like that of Hafiz to even greater liberty than would have been possible in a more tranquil era. Can you imagine the happiness that I had translating this? I translated this West-East Divan, the whole thing from start to finish in 2010, and it's still selling very nicely. I think some people may be using it as a college textbook. Had he waited to sing immortal songs until peace and rest arrived, the songs would have remained unsung, and his name would not hover today in the Orient with high inspiration on every lip, while the names of Genghis Khan, Timur, and Nadir Shah are preserved by history but as a scar on humanity, a warning and a sad example to future generations. Marvelous. Well, now it's time to read the Goethe poem, Timur, Winter and Timur, Goethe's reply, so to speak, to the evil doings of Napoleon in Europe with his conquest campaign. That's poem one. Oh, but you don't have your book. You have the other book here. This is in the Divan. It's a little over a page, but it's got power, I have to say. Goethe was a student of Shakespeare, as I think you might agree with me, even if I hadn't said it. Winter and Timur. Now with mighty horror, winter held them all surrounded, spreading icy breath among the people. He combined the rival wind streams into opposition harsh. Over them he lent his weapons to the storm, frost-pointed, sharpened. Then came down to counsel Timur. Shouting, threatening, he started. Act more slowly, gently, wretched tyrant, mustering injustice. Will men's hearts continue being singed and burnt in further arson? If of the accursed spirits you are one, I am the other. You are old, I too. The people and the land we're paralyzing. Mars you are, and I am Saturn. Malefactor constellations, horridest when they are combined. If you kill off spirits, numbing the surrounding air, my currents are yet colder than your coldest. You torment the wildest armies, credulous of 1,000 martyrs. Fine, in time be sure that I will help me God, far worse in gender, and by God, I owe you nothing. Hear me, God, what I am asking. Yes, by God, from cold that's fatal, you old man won't be protected by a fireplace with its cold glow. Not one flame tongue in December. No chance that Napoleon was listening. Oh, yes. Let's turn now to the poem Twins in the Divan, where Goethe, I've been talking about this for a while, tells us exactly what he thinks about Hafiz, because he actually went so far as to label one of the parts of his West-East Divan, Book of Hafiz. And in this Book of Hafiz there are all kinds of praises, but I think this is the best way, the most inclusive. That you can make no ending makes you great. That you have no beginning is your fate. Your song turns round, a star vault heaven frame, beginning, ending, evermore the same. And the clear import of the middle part is present at the end as at the start. Of joys you are the truest poet spring, that wave on wave unnumbered up will fling. Lips ever ready for a kiss, from ardent breast a hymn that flows, throat eager for the drinker bliss, and kind outpouring heart that glows. Should the whole world to ruin sink, Hafiz with you alone I'd vie. Desire and painful moan, we'll share them both. We twins have grown. To be like you, in love, in drink, my pride, my life in this be shown. My song, your fire's unique to you. You have united old and new. See how he pulled a Hafiz trick? He congratulates himself at the end. It's what you do when you're in tune with Hafiz. Now, a little further in the book, not in the section to Hafiz, but in the part called To the Cupbearer, he gives you some thoughts on wine that I think we can pinpoint the influence there. Is the Quran from eternity? That I will not ask. Might the Quran created be? No answer, a thankless task. That it the book of books need be, my Muslim faith made clear to me. That's Goethe speaking. That wine is from eternity, this I question not. That it might a pre-angel creation be, may also well be taught. The drinker, whatever the case may be, looks God in the face, the freer he. Interesting, huh? I think he's got the gospel, don't you think? And this is what he says on the next page. He goes on and on. They're all quite short, and some of them are very funny. Drunk is what all of us ought to be. Youth's being drunk without wine, you see. If age can drink itself back to youth, that's wonder virtue too, in truth. Dear life brings worry all the time. A worry breaker is the vine. And lastly, all right, no more investigation. The rule about wine is renunciation. But yet, if you still would drunken be, make it of highest quality. To drink bad wine is heresy, made twice as bad, it seems to me. Oh. Let's try this one. I'm very fond of this poem. This is poem number 44. By the time we get to the end of the poem, I'll make it quite clear why I chose it at this point. Praise the Almighty. The tavern is open and welcome, for by that door I may evade my sorrows. Everything whirls in confusion, chaotic in ardor, and yet this wine is real, not allegoric. Now that's a very important little statement and has been just about universally ignored. One reason why Hafiz is treated with such reverence today, that his books are used the way the Bible or Virgil's Aeneid was used for centuries as guides to conduct. Open up a random page and find out what you like, horoscopes. Find out how you should live today. Is that everything has been allegorically interpreted. The boyfriend has been allegorically interpreted as nothing but a spiritual comrade, and the wine has been called spiritual wine and nothing real whatever about it. Remember Emily Dickinson started a poem by saying, I taste a liquor never brewed. Well, all right. According to the critics, Hafiz drinks wine that was never brewed. Well, this is, to me, incredible, and quite incredible, nonetheless, I sometimes write in a more pious, sort of tongue-in-cheek way, as if I were one of the traditional critics. But other times I don't write that way. And yet this wine is real, not allegoric. Wine cups are drunken and stubborn and mockingly minded, and I, in contrast, limp and weak, imploring. Torments of tresses I cannot relate to you briefly. I talked before about the fetish of long hair, whether it's men or women here. He goes nuts over long, fragrant hair. The tale of them will make a longer story. Hair locks of Layla would burden the spirit of Mejnun. The souls of Ayaz, Mahmud's face would trouble. I should tell you about, do you know anything about Mejnun and Layla? Mejnun is not actually a name. It's roughly equivalent in root and meaning to the Yiddish word meshuggah. It means he's out of his mind. It means Mejnun. You see the J-N, that's the word jinn. It means bejinned. He's got touched in the head. He's got a peculiar little evil spirit in his head. And Mejnun got that after he, in some people's view, went insane, although Goethe wrote a poem to prove that, in fact, it wasn't real insanity. What happens is this, and we can make it clear by summing it all up in this way. Mejnun and Layla are the Romeo and Juliet of Persia. They belong to rival clans which were at war. And therefore, the parents, the elders in neither clan would permit the wedding of Mejnun and Layla. And therefore Mejnun was exiled from the city into the desert. And there he sat in the desert, amid the desert sands. And what did he do with himself in his time? He write the name of Layla in the sand, and the wind would blow it away. And then he write the name again, and the wind would blow it away again. Now, is this mad? Goethe wrote a poem in his divan saying, no, this isn't mad. This is love. This is higher wisdom. But Mejnun does mean meshuggah. And you can draw your own conclusions about this kind of behavior. Shut is my eye, never opened, for I am a falcon, since blinding light from you has lit the morning. Whoso approaches your Kaaba, the holy stone of Islam that is visited by pilgrims to Mecca, the place of the holy, must pray before your brows that are the Qibla. Qibla is an arch in a mosque, often decorated with holy sayings from the Quran. Friends, if you ask about Hafiz, the poor one, examine the candle ever melting while it's burning. Now there, I like that because it refers to one of the themes for which, I didn't mention it yet, but for which Hafiz is most famous and most deserves to be famed, and that is his use of the candle. Hegel has commented on this in his Aesthetics. He wrote lectures, or Hegel's students, after he died, put together his notes in his course on theory of aesthetics into a very big book which is filled with wisdom. And here's what Hegel says. In the poems of Hafiz, even in grief he remains just as carefree as he is in good fortune. So, for example, he says once, out of thanks that the presence of thy friend enlightens thee, in woe burn like the candle and be satisfied. The candle teaches us to laugh and cry. Clear? the laughing of the smiling fire, the crying of the drops of molten wax. Every time it shines, it cries. It can't laugh without crying. The candle teaches us to laugh and cry, although through the flame it laughs in cheerful splendor, while at the same time it melts away in hot tears. In its burning it spreads cheerful splendor. This is the general character of this whole Mohammedan poetry. So, I now turn to the candle, because Hafiz wrote one of his best poems on a candle, and we don't want to stop this unit of the presentation without it. That is dialogue 67 in our wine book. Now, I want to say something about the form. The form is that of the ghazal. When Persians say it, it sounds more like ghazal, and I'm trying hard to imitate that. I hope I did it right. It means something very delicate and graceful. It's the same word really as gazelle, or if you like women's names, Giselle. They're all the same. You've heard the name. It is a name of women, isn't it? Giselle. That's what it is. Now, the ghazal is written with, this is the correct way to write it. And this is what Hafiz wrote in his entire book. But our Hammer didn't use it. He used everything else that he could possibly dream of, including several meters that he invented, some of those being the best. But he did not often write a ghazal because they are hard. I have tried them. And the hard thing about it is at the end of every couplet of 6 beat lines, you have to have the same rhyme. The rhyming word of every couplet is the same syllable as that of every other couplet. So if you've got 16 couplets, you need 16 rhymes on one syllable. This is nearly impossible to do. And one way in which you do it, you can do it, and this is a convenient way, is simply to repeat the same word. And then when you do that, you had better write rather carefully, because it's not always going to seem to make sense unless you've done it well. Here is Hafiz's poem in the ghazal form. You get finally a sense of the form the man himself used throughout his book. Mid handsome ones I'm famous, faithful as the candle. I sit at night amid the drunken like the candle. By day or night no sleep my weary eyes will favor. I'm weeping, sick with separation as the candle. The shears of grief have snipped my fraying thread of patience. Yet in the heat glow of your love I laugh, a candle. Send butterfly desire amid the night of rending. Or I might set the world on fire like any candle. If bloody tears weren't streaming from my eyes in quiet, there's no one who would see my spirit like the candle. My weeping heart, you see it caught twixt heat and water. It never ceases to lament, a plaintive candle. The rock of patience molten down like wax from grieving can prove my life with love is melting like the candle. That my day is dark without your world illuming beauty. Yet incomplete and self-dissolved is love, a candle. Your flame of blazing love has captivated Hafiz. But when will water quench this burning of a candle? Okay, ghazal is a theme that some modern American poets have tried. I haven't sampled them once. I actually saw a book of modern American poems that their authors had labeled ghazals. But I very much doubt that anybody observes these rules, or if so, it must be a very small number, because it isn't easily done. But here, let me tell you something interesting. I did it. This, in my reply, is done in exactly the form, and believe it or not, I used the same words and yet said different things. This is really a pleasure to write, because I took the subject matter right out of my own diary of my daughter growing up. My little daughter once, when looking at a candle, began to cry. She feared the dying of the candle. I hope I never will forget the tender moment. We cry to see light go. Our life is but a candle. Yet feel the minute, so transcending in its beauty, 'twill climb above the little limit of the candle. And is it not a wonder that amid the weeping and even rage, as of a conflagration candle, the poet, smiling at enkindling by the lover, can laugh in ample triumph as an avid candle? An angry, smiling, weeping, laughing human being, a dying, living soul envisioned in a candle. Our fortune is a freedom, even when born in sorrow, a centered energy, an eye-requiting candle. The cheerful splendor Hegel viewed in Hafiz writing, made clear entirely in the image of a candle, the many colors in the flaming eye concentred, alembicating into light the waxen candle. Okay, I'll take a deep breath, and those are the first two parts of my presentation, and in the last one, which is more relaxed in structure, I simply want to sample for you some of the beautiful verse forms which, abandoning the ghazal entirely with its rigors and discipline, Hammer employed in his Hafiz poems. And one of my favorites can be shown in Dialogue 32. 32 has an extra kind of fascination because it gives us a little window, as a newspaper article might do, into political life in this 14th century Shiraz. What happens is there's a new regime in power. And it's bad in a quite unexpected way. They've called in the wine police. They're closing the taverns down. And very soon you may, in fact, have no recourse by going for your troubles of going to a pub and having a banquet with wine and meeting beloveds there. Not if the pub is shut, and if the wine police are cruising around the town. But such a thing apparently happened, and you just have to hope and wait and pray that more liberal regime will succeed the present troubles. No, I'm not talking about today. I'm talking about the 14th century, you understand. Although the wine may gladden the heart, although the wind with blossom bestrew, yet drink not you to strum of the lute, for keen is the watching. And if mayhap a friend or a flask should come to hand, be prudent, I pray, be sparing, careful, pouring a drink. The times are alarming. Within the roomy sleeve of your cowl, alert, concerned, your glass you may hide. The times are dark and crimsoning like the eye of the bottle. The marks of wine that spatter my cowl, I'd wash away with tears if I could. The age of moderation has come, a season for fasting. The run of life is blood-dripping steel. Behold, like raindrops falling to earth, the gleaming head of High Nushirwan, crown royal of Parvis. Renouncing all the goods of the world, in this our era seek no repose. The purest wine such vessel will hold is dreg-heavy, clouded. O Hafiz, you have conquered with song the mode of Persia, then of Iraq, Tibris and Baghdad. They will be next, and others will follow. The bad regimes come and go, but Hafiz stays on top. Here's my little reply. A new regime Mubariz ud-Din inaugurated. Woe to the ones who love the inn. Their banquet will now be shortened or cancelled. We raise our hands for Abu Ishaq, the sadly ousted comrade of those anacreontic topers of whom our bard was enamored. Yet why lament? The lute on the page is tuned and proved. The troubadour luck will not run out. The conqueror comes. The crowd will confirm it. And what I have done is I capitalized on what happened to me at this point. A song came back to me that we were currently singing in university chorus. We were singing something called Carmina Burana. Are you familiar with this? It's wonderful, isn't it? A suite of medieval songs, the magic word, by Karl Orff, and one of them is called Fortune Blanco Vulnera, I Lament the Woes of Fate. And this is the ups and downs of fortune. So I'm going to read this to you. I translated it from Latin in a Western counterpart form to what we've just heard. My plaint is of the pain that flows, crying from the eyes. Rebellious luck retracted those presents I would prize. For true it is, a forelock she has that you may find, but if you miss it, you will see baldness all behind. On fortune's royal throne I'd sat, favored and elate, enwreathed and crowned with blossoms that friends are lent by fate. Once flourishing and raised on high, happy were my days. Now fallen from the summit, I wail my former ways. The wheel of fortune turns, and I sink, diminished less, as if ejected from the sky. See his mightiness, the king that on the peak of power dwells, let him beware. Queen Hecuba, the Ilian flower, killed, and who will care? Okay, that's my adventure there. And now I think maybe, oh, here's something jaunty. I'll give you just a sample on 68. This is one of the strangest rhythms I've ever seen in verse, and I thought it must be a Hummer invention, but it isn't. It comes from Horace, the Roman poet. Place that is safe, wine that is pure, friend that is true, and these the three that you've been granted. Fate delightful, truths of the world, deeds of the world, all are in vain. 1,000 times have I confirmed that rule of merit. Quickly to find safety at last, limited time, for robbers lurking in the rear guard lie awaiting. Sad and alas, up till today, never I'd known the one I chose for guide would lead to lucky fortune. Over the cup, rubious wine, penance to do is merely phantom thought. The reason won't support it. Chin dimple fine, this will contain lovable charm, so no rich and myriad wisdom ever can encompass. Where is my heart leading me wise onto the path? My friend I never could succeed, astray in finding. Slender the waist, wonder to see, even if I may no embrace attain, the mind will take its pleasure. Ruby recall, mentioned before, why be surprised? The eye an ardent pyro for a ring will offer. Smiling the mouth, truly I'm yours, never a doubt. Oh Hafiz, like a little boy he'll fool and lead you. Well, for that, I had to write a square dance. I mean, the rhythms are amazing. Tune up the flute, string up the harp, strike up the band, and grab your partner by the hand, and next encircle gently her waist, whirl her about, then to embrace will after all the dancing be the pretty sequel. Never before, traveling bards seeking delight, have you, the motley minstrel rhapsodizing wildly, dared to perform, free of constraint, willing as wind, a more entrancing folk dance over plain and meadow. Follow the sun, tracing the brook, fording the stream, and bring a picnic lunch and spread it on the greensward. Louder the heart, warmer the blood, higher the mind. We follow Hafiz to the promised land of pleasure. Well, I have only one more poem to read, but it's the strangest in the book. I think you probably agree with me. That is poem 84. I think this poem may set some kind of a record. I don't think there's any other tavern poem that quite compares with it. Bring me, taverner, the vine juice that will make us whole, free giving. Bring it, pour it, for my heart is not free granting, lacking wholeness. Bring the wisdom stone to make us Karun rich and old as Noah. Come that for your sake be opened all the gates of life and fortune. Bring us now in wet the fire that Zoroaster sought in ground dust. World and fire flame veneration, when we're drunk, are both permitted. Bring me wine of Jemshid's goblet, which would gleam in very voidness. Give it that I may be strengthened, looking through the world as he did. Taverner, the glass of Jemshid, hand me that and no delaying. Wisely had he claimed the monarch, all the world's not worth a granule. Taverner, the nectar goblet, for to paradise 'twill lead us. Flute and lyre proclaim in radiance, ferment than a crown is finer. Bring to light the well-swathed beauty, prisoned in her narrow dwelling. Bring her, for I pledge my name to wine and goblet benefactions. Bring to me the flaming water, lions drink and kindle forests. Lend it, let me storm the heavens, rend the wolf's net asunder. Wine whereby the Houris teach the angels Eden-like behavior. On the heat glow I'm depending, airing out my brain with fragrance. Bring me wine whereof the splendor gleamings gave to Jem and Khosru. Give, with flute would I be singing. Where is Jem and where is Qaus? Blessing bring of ancient ages. Bring the Shahs that long have left us. Wine that mastery will give and purity to hearts is preaching. Bring to me the Shah of hearts, for now I'm not myself in spirit. Give me wine and wash me pure of spot and taint of care and worry. Grant and view the face of gladness. Gloomed I crave a treasured wisdom. Dwelling in a spirit garden, why am I enchained and fettered? When a glass of wine I'm holding, all the world that mirror shows me. Then I, beggar, speak of lordship. Hafiz waking up is singing. In her sphere, Zoré rejoices. Fear the day unstable, shifting. From the wine entreat more lifetime, for the wine is life increasing. Opening the gates of mystery. Taverner, gather the drinkers, for the world to all is faithless. Memory will bubbles lend that vanish like the crown of Kobad. Seek in wine your heart fulfillment. You've no peace of mind if wineless. Like the body reft of spirit is the heart whence wine was taken. Taverner, bring up the goblets. Let me tell of royal greatness. Taverner, the world's inconstant, with a will to shed one's lifeblood. Taverner, don't give us problems. You're not fire, but earth created. Fill the goblet up with wine and free of dregs, and fresh and cleanly. Give me some with sweeter spices. Gold and silver I am lacking. Give me of the ruby-colored, needing neither lies nor boasting. Lend the coral prayer bead chain as a pledge of wine, her blessing. Near the cloister is the tavern. Many treasures there are buried. Should one tell you, stay, don't go there, give him a good night for answer. Bring me, host, the purple goblet, heart and spirit gladness granting, that my sorrow's hold be loosened, leading me to firmer pathways. Bring the wine, our soul's nutrition, powering the heart and spirit. I this world would fain be leaving. Bring the goblet's moon and sunlight, that in heaven my throne be readied. Come with goblet wine, the oldest, gradually make me drunken. If with purest wine you treat me, drunken will I sing and grateful. Taverner, your cheeks the fragrance waft, as of a vernal ferment. Take the glass, no sin be fearing, wine's in paradise decanted. Come, I need some wine, and badly. Put into my hand a goblet, of the world's ill fate despairing. I've been running to the cloister. Hand me happy making wine, and I'll bestride my battle charger. Rustum-like head down the high road, seeking heart air in the tumble. Give the ruby goblet which the heart in timely wise will open, so will reason's rule be countered, and in worlds be banners planted. With the goblet's aid caressing, we will quell the flame of sorrow. Let us drink today together. There's no other time so fitting. Who the festival have ordered are with happy mind contented, all the snares of Deves evading, envied by the dust below them. Who has such a throne established of a little 10-day corner? Youth, alas, in wind evanished, blessed who have spent it wisely. Give me wine, and overleaping both the worlds, I'll fly in oneness. Quickly give me kotel measure, openly or else in secret. Elephants big drums may carry, but departure drum has sounded. From the light sphere comes at morning call of Houris to me clearly. lovely bird, and sweeter spirit, lift your pinions, break the cages, sit upon the 7-dome roof where the spirits are reposing. At the time of Bisur Shimir, Menuchir wins all with beauty. Nashurman upon his goblet had this writ in early ages: counsel hear from us, and learn of how the course of life is fated. Here is but a veil of sorrow, few the joys in realms sublunar. We are glad when cares are banished. Who has nothing has no worries. Where is Gem, and where his goblet? Solomon, and where his mirror? What philosophers aware of when Gem, Cause had existed, when they from the world departed? Naught but names they left behind them. Do not bind your heart to earth, for once you're gone there's no returning. Fools alone their hearts have given to the earth, to heaven alien. She will never lend what's wished for. Here is not the place of gladness. Taverner, the fiery water, let my burning be extinguished, for my heart in flame is lying. Therefore liquid pour upon it. Taverner, give ruby water that the ruby's hue has stolen. Quickly give us aquavitae, flowing like the heated sun glow. Single glass will let you see the 5 high cupolas, 9 stepways. Unsupported they can go there who annihilate the selfhood. If you're clever, be quite simple. Like the pub dust, nothing higher. Be not bound to earthly cloister, or like dust you'll soon be scattered. Give me, host, the royal goblet that the heart and spirit gladdens. Wine and goblet nothing mean but purest love as we are speaking. As the lightning, youth will vanish. As the wind, our life soon over. Leave behind the 6-doored dwelling and the old 9-headed serpent, gold and mind expending nimbly, if you still can love the spirit. Hasten to the other life world. All but God is vain and idle. Thank you for coming today.